Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News, an Indian perspective on All India Radio. This is Renuka, and with me is Purnima Samant Karakoti, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. India to resume export of vaccines under Vaccine Maitri in order to fulfill its commitment of COVAX. India and US discuss issues pertaining to bilateral defense cooperation and regional matters, including situation in Afghanistan. In Pakistan, Hindu family tortured and held hostage for fetching water from a mosque tap in Punjab province. In Russia, 8 persons killed in a shooting at Perm University. In IPL cricket, Kolkata Knight Riders beat Royal Challengers Bangalore by 9 wickets in Abu Dhabi. As the nationwide free COVID-19 vaccination campaign at government facilities for those above 18 years is underway, we advise our young listeners to get vaccinated and help others get vaccinated. We also advise our listeners not to lower their guard as COVID-19 remains a threat to our health. Please stay at home unless it is essential to go out and continue to follow these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact national helpline numbers 011-2397-8046 and 1075. And now the news in detail. India's Health Minister Mansukh Mandaviya on Monday announced resuming of Vaccine Maitri in the next month. Addressing the media, Mr. Mandaviya informed that India will be resuming export of vaccines under Vaccine Maitri in order to fulfill the commitment of India towards COVAX in line with the motto Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam. He informed that the surplus supply of vaccines will be used to fulfill the commitment towards the world for the collective fight against COVID-19. COVAX is co-led by Gavi, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, CEPI, and the WHO. Highlighting the importance of indigenous research and production of COVID vaccines in India, Mr. Mandaviya said that it is due to the relentless efforts and guidance of Prime Minister Narendra Modi that India was simultaneously undertaking research and production of COVID vaccines in line with the global developments. He said, India's vaccination drive has been a role model for the world and it is marching ahead with great speed. The minister said more than 4 times India has crossed 1 crore since the vaccination drive was commenced on 16th of January. India has crossed yet another milestone in the COVID vaccination drive, with the total vaccination crossing the 81 crore mark on Monday. India and US discussed issues pertaining to bilateral defense cooperation and regional matters, including situation in Afghanistan. In a telephonic talk between Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, both the countries agreed to continue the useful dialogue. Both the leaders also exchanged views about combating terrorism in the region. Mr. Singh and Mr. Austin appreciated the mutual cooperation in the recent evacuation operations in Afghanistan. Both the countries stressed on the need to strengthen the partnership further.
United States President Joe Biden is hosting the first ever in-person summit of the leaders of the Quad group of countries later this week in Washington, D.C. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will travel to Washington to meet with Mr. Biden at the White House on 24th of this month. In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on Prime Minister Modi's visit to USA, expectation and challenges. In conversation are Bhashwati Mukherjee, former ambassador, and Nilova Roy Chaudhary, journalist.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be traveling to the United States to participate along with Prime Minister Scott Morrison of Australia, Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga of Japan, and the US President Joe Biden, who will be the host for the first ever in-person Leaders Summit of the Quadrilateral Framework in Washington, D.C. on September 24th. The leaders will review the progress made since their first virtual summit on 12th of March 2021 and discuss other regional issues of shared interest. Now, the interesting thing is that this quadrilateral of democracies has raised its profile over the past year, and after conducting a series of multilateral military exercises together, appears set to become some kind of a fairly powerful bloc to promote multilateral cooperation. And in fact, India has now raised the level of engagement individually with each Quad member to an annual 2+2 format of defense ministers and foreign ministers between our and their defense ministers and foreign ministers. So in fact, the first such meeting with Australia just got over, prompting China to get rather antsy. Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee joins us this evening to outline the significance of the quadrilateral of democracies and this forthcoming summit of the four leaders. Given the global situation, clearly events that have taken place in Afghanistan will form a major focus of their discussions. So good evening, Ambassador, and would you please tell us why the meeting of Quad leaders in person is so important at this point of time?
Thank you, Nilüfer. First of all, let me begin by saying that the Quad is now an important grouping in a new world order which has been created due to the rise of China, its aggressive policies in the South China Sea and in the Indo-Pacific and towards its neighbors. In a way, the Quad responds to the new realities of the time, and even more so after the withdrawal, rather hasty withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan, the power vacuum which has been created as a result, the manner in which that power vacuum has been filled by Pakistan, and the effort by China to move into Afghanistan, not just through the BRI, but also to use it to enhance Pakistan's strategic space vis-a-vis India. This is the first meeting of the Quad which is taking place after what has happened in Afghanistan. This is also the first meeting between our Prime Minister and the US President, and the fact that the US President decided to make it an in-person meeting and that we have our Raksha Mantri and our External Affairs Minister also adds an added dimension and importance to this meeting, and the fact that we've already had our bilaterals with Australia. So Australia has now become, despite its initial hesitation because of its earlier compulsions with regard to trade with China, Australia now has become a very, very important part of the Quad mechanism, and Australia has also moved much closer to India in the last couple of years. So I think we would definitely benefit by the support that would be extended to us also, because we are in a very tricky situation where we have a hostile China on the rise, moving into the strategic space vacated by US and Afghanistan, an extremely aggressive Pakistan that is trying to divert attention by talking about India's aggressive intentions rather than acknowledging that it is going to use Afghanistan to try and launch jihadis against us in Kashmir. All in all, this is an extremely good time for us, Nilüfer, for us to discuss with our Quad friends and allies, and also to lay bare our worries strategically in the new situation and scenario facing India after the sudden collapse of Kabul and the whole of Afghanistan now to the Taliban, and given the fact that the new Taliban government is full of hardliners and many of whom are on the UN sanctions list, and ironically, India is the chairman of the UN Security Council Sanctions Committee.
Bhaswati, it's very interesting that you should particularly point out the fact that, China's aggression and the fact that they're in alliance with Pakistan and the kinds of things that they've been saying. So clearly there's something that we are doing right in terms of this quadrilateral for China to get as antsy as it is. So the timing again of the Quad Leaders Summit on the 24th is very, very significant, I think, and clearly intended to send a message to China, would you say?
Definitely, because the fact that the Chinese are rattled is clear by the fact that they try to develop their own counter-Quad, if I may use that terminology. It hasn't really taken off, frankly. And the fact that they are antsy, that they are upset, is because they understand clearly that in the present scenario, where the NATO membership includes Turkey, which is allied to China, the Quad actually right now is the only grouping which could realistically take on the Herculean job of containing China. And the Chinese know it. Because what is the membership of Quad but the most powerful countries in the region and United States? So, you have Australia, India, Japan. That's a very powerful combination along with United States. And these are also countries with powerful navies. And if there's one thing that the Chinese do not have, not their strong point, is their navy. They've always been a continental territorial power. So despite their efforts to spread their wings in the South China Sea and in the Indian Ocean, the point is if they have to threaten Taiwan from the sea, and that is something that can be countered by the very powerful navies of the Quad countries. So these are also red lines that the Quad is putting in place, which is much required if China is to be halted inexorable march towards militarizing this region. There are articles floating in social media, Nilova, article written 8 years ago, but which set out China's ambition, and that includes Taiwan and Meghalaya, apart from Tibet. So it clearly shows China's naked ambition, which can only be countered now by United States and the Quad.
Bhaswati, the post-COVID global economic recovery is also obviously going to form another very significant part of the discussions that the leadership of the Quad countries will have. And countries with economic heft are those that will threaten China again. And China is very proud of its economic boom, rightly so. The only other way that they can really be countered is through massive economic cooperation amongst, say, countries like democracies of the Quad. So again, the vaccine initiative, for example, that they had at their first virtual summit, these kinds of things, how much of an impact do you think these ideas and initiatives would have on the global community, or at least the regional community?
But you would recall, Nilova, that their last summit, when the vaccine initiative was discussed, at that time India had not been struck down by the second wave, which was so devastating, and the Delta variant. We were really not able to deliver the number of vaccines that had been envisaged. But now we would be in a position, hopefully by the end of December, to be able to take that project forward. In the meantime, there have been outbreaks of the Delta variant in China. So the point is that the Chinese are now understanding that nobody is immune from this virus that they have unleashed on the world, including themselves. And definitely in the post-COVID recovery period, the vaccine diplomacy, which was initially discussed in their last summit, would definitely be discussed at this summit, because the world is looking to countries like India to see whether we can provide them with a much cheaper COVID-19 vaccine, because we've always done that. We did it for HIV/AIDS, if you remember. And the other issue is how we can get together to rebuild those parts of our economy which have been particularly touched, all the countries concerned. That includes the hospitality sector, the air travel, tourism, certain aspects of trade. I'm sure that these would be important parts of the agenda, and there would definitely be discussions on how to cooperate on vaccine diplomacy, given the fact that earlier the Quad nations had decided that they would get together and help out, for instance, Africa. So this could certainly be part of their discussion on the 24th.
The Prime Minister is also scheduled to address the general debate of the high-level segment of the next session of the United Nations General Assembly. He will be addressing them on the 25th. And this year's theme, again, blends very well with the post-COVID recovery part of it, talking about building resilience through hope to recover from COVID-19, rebuild sustainably, respond to the needs of the planet, and respect the rights of people, and revitalize the United Nations. So for the 4 democracies that will be meeting in the Quad format, these are all aspects of multilateralism which they are trying to promote. Wouldn't you agree with that assessment?
Absolutely. In fact, it's quite a coincidence that even when we had the BRICS summit, the theme suggested by India was quite similar. And when our PM will address the UN General Assembly high-level segment, he will definitely talk about India's experience in combating COVID, how we put our resources together. We are still a developing country. We developed our vaccine. Our efforts to vaccinate 1.3 billion people. How many have we vaccinated so far with the first dose? The manner in which we are now pushing through the vaccination program on a daily basis. All these are experiences which the UN will look forward to our sharing with them, because it's quite unique the manner in which we have actually handled the COVID crisis. It's a lesson to many parts of the world. We would also talk about our developmental models and how, despite every handicap, we have always tried to reach out and help other countries, developing countries, and we've also tried to share our experiences. So I think these are all issues that we are going to discuss at the UN General Assembly, a high-level segment, and maybe combined weight of the Quad countries who would be addressing the UN General Assembly might help to forge a consensus on some of these important issues. Nilofer.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Mukherjee. It was a pleasure talking to you.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Monday met Minister of Foreign Affairs of Saudi Arabia, Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud. The meeting reviewed progress on various ongoing bilateral initiatives, including those taken under the aegis of the Strategic Partnership Council established between both countries. Mr. Modi expressed India's keenness to see greater investment from Saudi Arabia, including in key sectors like energy, IT and defense manufacturing. The meeting also allowed exchange of perspectives on regional developments, including the situation in Afghanistan. The Prime Minister conveyed his special thanks and appreciation to Saudi Arabia for looking after the welfare of the Indian diaspora during the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Modi also conveyed his warm greetings and regards to the King and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. The 6th edition of SCO Exercise Peaceful Mission 2021 has started at Orenburg region of southwest Russia. The aim of the exercise is to foster close relations between SCO member states and to enhance abilities of the military leaders to command multinational military contingents. An Indian military contingent comprising of an all-arms combined force of 200 personnel from Indian Army and Indian Air Force is participating in the exercise. The opening ceremony on Monday commenced with an impressive parade by all participating contingents. Over the next few days, troops will train, share and rehearse tactical drills which will culminate in a final validation exercise. Troops from all armies and air forces will jointly undertake operations in a controlled and simulated environment. This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at @AIR News Alerts.
In Pakistan, a family of farm workers from the Hindu minority community was tortured and held hostage by some village landlords in Rahim Yar Khan city of Punjab province. The family was reportedly tortured and held hostage when they obtained water from a mosque tap. The incident took place a few days back when Alam Ram Bhil, a resident of Basti Khahur Khan in the city suburbs, was picking raw cotton along with his other family members, including his wife, in a field. Mr. Bhil said when the family went outside a nearby mosque to fetch drinking water from a tap, some local landlords and their men beat them. When the family was returning home after unloading the picket cotton, the landlords held them hostage at their outhouse and tortured them again. Mr. Bhil said the police did not register a case as the attackers were related to a local parliamentarian of Prime Minister Imran Khan's ruling Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf Party, PTI. PTI South Punjab Minority Wing Secretary General Yudhishthir Chauhan said that incident was in his knowledge, but due to the influence of a ruling party's MP, he preferred to stay away. In Russia, 8 people were killed today when a gunman opened fire at a university in city of Perm. The assailant walked onto the campus and started shooting indiscriminately. The incident occurred at 1100 hours at Perm State University, located around 1,300 kilometers, 800 miles east of the capital Moscow in the Urals. Students and teachers barricaded themselves inside the university building and others were seen jumping from windows. Police has detained the injured attacker, who is reported to be a student. Further details awaited.
Ruling United Russia Party, which supports President Vladimir Putin, has won a bigger than expected parliamentary majority despite unease over living standards. With over 99% of ballots counted, the Central Election Commission said United Russia has won nearly 50% of the vote, with its nearest rival, the Communist Party, taking just under 19%. The scale of the victory means United Russia will have more than 2/3 of deputies in the 450-seat State Duma lower house of the parliament. This will enable it to continue to push through laws without having to rely on other parties. The polls show that Putin remains a popular figure, with many Russians crediting him for standing up to the West and restoring national pride. Putin, who has been in power as president or prime minister since 1999, is still dominating ahead of the next presidential election in 2024. India has climbed 2 spots and has been ranked 46th by the World Intellectual Property Organization in the Global Innovation Index 2021 rankings. India has been on a rising trajectory over the past several years in the Global Innovation Index, from a rank of 81 in 2015 to 46 in 2021. Innovation has been at the forefront of the battle against the unprecedented crisis created by the pandemic and will be pivotal in driving the country's resilience and self-reliance, as enshrined in the Prime Minister's clarion call on Atmanirbhar Bharat. The consistent improvement in the Global Innovation Index rankings is owing to the immense knowledge capital, the vibrant startup ecosystem, and the amazing work done by the public and the private research organizations.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson will hold a roundtable of world leaders on Monday to address major gaps on emissions targets and climate finance. The closed-door meeting on the sidelines of the annual high-level week of the UN General Assembly will include leaders from a few dozen countries representing industrialized nations, emerging economies and vulnerable developing countries. Selwyn Hart, Assistant Secretary General and Special Advisor to Mr. Guterres on climate action, said the roundtable discussion aims to ensure a successful outcome at the UN Climate Conference being held from October 31st to November 12th in Glasgow. A UN analysis of pledges under the Paris Climate Agreement released on Friday said that under current national pledges, global emissions would be 16% higher in 2030 than they were in 2010, far off the 45% reduction by 2030 that scientists say is needed to stave off disastrous climate change. France's defence minister has cancelled talks with her UK counterpart amid the row prompted by a new security deal between Britain, the US and Australia. Paris is angry after Australia signed the AUKUS Pact to build nuclear-powered submarines, pulling out of a major contract with France in the process. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said France had nothing to worry about from the deal. But Florence Parly's meeting with UK Defence Secretary Ben Wallace in London this week has been called off. Lord Ricketts, a former British ambassador to France who was due to co-chair the 2 days of talks, confirmed the meeting had been postponed to a later date.
China's property giant Evergrande, the world's most indebted property developer with more than $300 billion of liabilities, has created fears of a systemic spillover to other parts of the Chinese economy. It is crumbling under the huge debt burden and has warned more than once that it could default. Shares of Evergrande on Monday plunged more than 15% to the lowest in over a decade, as investors remain disappointed about its ability to pay interest on its bonds with a payment deadline this Thursday. The developer said on Sunday that it has begun repaying investors in its wealth management products with real estate. However, it is not of much use for the investors protesting at the firm's headquarters Shenzhen, who are demanding for cash payments. Evergrande is due to pay $83.5 million interest on 23rd of this month on the firm's bond, which will be a key test of whether it will be able to tackle an impending default on its loans. A report from Prasad Bharati correspondent in Beijing.
Evergrande has been scrambling to raise funds to pay its many lenders, suppliers and investors, with regulators warning that its $305 billion of liabilities could spark broader risks to the country's financial system if not stabilized. Coming Thursday, bond would default if Evergrande fails to settle the interest within 30 days of the scheduled payment dates. Banks have reportedly declined to extend new loans to the buyers of uncompleted Evergrande residential projects, while rating agencies have repeatedly downgraded the firm, citing its liquidity liquidity crunch. Some economists have warned of a domino effect from a potential Evergrande collapse, which makes some analysts think that Beijing may step in with a bailout package to rescue it, while others still differ on this because Beijing does not want to see big corporate debt after last August's ruling in this regard. Whatever may be the way out to manage this crisis, it is likely to hit sentiments of foreign investors in China. Anshuman Mishra for World News, All India Radio, Beijing.
A volcano eruption on La Palma in the Spanish Canary Islands has destroyed houses and forced about 5,000 residents to evacuate. Lava from the Cumbervilla volcano has been pouring downhill since yesterday's eruption, devastating everything in its path. Local officials said about 100 houses have been destroyed so far. The Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez flew to La Palma yesterday to oversee rescue efforts. Mr. Sánchez said authorities are closely monitoring fires that may start from the burning lava. The military and civil guard has been deployed to help.
And now a report from the business world. At the domestic stock markets, key indices posted losses for the second straight day, and the rupee ended weak against the dollar. In the international market, Brent crude futures fell sharply to trade below $74 a barrel. A report from the business world.
At the stock markets, the Sensex at the Bombay Stock Exchange declined 525 points or 0.9% to end at 58,491 today. The Nifty at the National Stock Exchange dropped 188 points or 1.1% to close at 17,397. At the domestic forex market, the rupee depreciated 26 paisa to 73 rupees and 74 paisa against the US dollar. Globally, stock markets in China, Japan and South Korea were closed for a holiday today. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index, however, slumped 3.3% and Singapore's Straits Times Index fell 1%. In Europe, London's FTSE 100 had declined 1.9%, France's CAC 40 had slipped 2.2% and Germany's DAX had dropped 2.9% in intraday trade. Back home, gold gained 14 rupees to 45,080 rupees at Delhi's bullion market. Global crude oil futures dropped sharply as rising risk aversion weighed on stock markets and boosted the US dollar, while more US Gulf oil output came back online in wake of two hurricanes. So Brent crude fell $1.66 to trade at $73.68 a barrel. US futures declined $1.74 to $70.23 a barrel. Anubha Rohatgi for World News, All India Radio.
In the Indian Premier League IPL 2021, Kolkata Knight Riders KKR beat Royal Challengers Bangalore RCB by 9 wickets at Sheikh Zayed Stadium in Abu Dhabi tonight. Chasing a paltry 93 for a win, Shubham Gill with 48 and debutant Venkatesh Iyer with 41 not out stitched 82 runs for the opening wicket as KKR reached 94 for 1 in just 10 overs. Earlier electing to bat, RCB were bundled out for 92 with Andre Russell and Varun Chakravarti taking 3 wickets each. Punjab Kings will take on Rajasthan Royals at Dubai on Tuesday.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The Guardian writes, Japan urges Europe to speak out against China's military expansion. The Globe Mail says, Pfizer and BioNTech says, data show their COVID-19 vaccine is safe and protective in kids aged 5 to 11. Sputnik News reports, EU will not renegotiate Irish protocol but ready to engage with Britain, senior diplomat says. South China Morning Post writes, North Korea says US submarine deal and Asia-Pacific alliance could trigger nuclear arms race. Financial Times says, Wall Street joins global sell-off as Evergrande crisis intensifies.
A quick look at the headlines once again. India to resume export of vaccines under Vaccine Maitri in order to fulfill its commitment of COVAX. India and US discuss issues pertaining to bilateral defense cooperation and regional matters including situation in Afghanistan. In Pakistan, Hindu family tortured and held hostage for fetching water from a mosque tap in Punjab province. In Russia, 8 persons killed in a shooting at Perm University. And in IPL cricket, Kolkata Knight Riders beat Royal Challengers Bangalore by 9 wickets in Abu Dhabi. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan, Vaishnava Jan, by artists from Russia. This bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.